Hello everyone. Today we are going to go over my 5 favorite moments from the Stormlight Archive, Book 2, Words of Radiance by Sanderson. Although this time we are going to add a couple of honorable mentions. And at the end we are going to discuss one moment from the novella Edge Dancer, which is basically Stormlight Book 2.5, as it occurs between Words of Radiance and Book 3, Oathbringer. So, to kick off this video, pretty much, same as last time, major spoilers are in this video. If you have not read the book and you want to, go do it. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10, just like The Way of Kings. In fact, I think I might... It's a toss-up which one I like more, The Way of Kings or Words of Radiance. Both of them are very good, and as I was... even before I started re-listening to Words of Radiance, I was just thinking of moments that I knew were going to be on this list. One in particular. But we will get to that in a moment. Like I said, major spoilers for Book 2. If you have not read the Stormlight Archive and want to do so, please, by all means, stop this video. Go read it. It is awesome. I don't have an accurate count of how many days we are away from Wind and Truth at the time of recording. But, anyway, let's get to it. And I'm going to start with an honorable mention. And I'm not going to give context, because it's better if you just go in blind reading this moment. As soon as I say what it is, if you know, you know. And you know what, it's funny. My first honorable mention is I Am a Stick. Like I said, if you know, you know. If you don't, go read the book and find out. 'Cause I love that moment so much. And I know it's a meme. It is one of the great Stormlight memes. One of the great Cosmere memes, probably. But, yeah. It makes me laugh every time. Alright, so the first proper moment that we are going to discuss is, if you guys remember the last video, I really do like big plot and character moments as well as striking imagery. And in this case, it is a striking imagery one. In this case, it is Shallan and the Sandvid. Shallan being a artist from, I think it's Baden? Where is she from? I don't remember. Frickin' fake fan over here. Where is she from? Badenar? Google, help me. Internet, please. People are watching. Where are you from? Yeah, Vaden is where she's from. Okay. A artist from Baden with, well, she's more of a scholar with artistic tendencies. Anyway, after the events of the Way of Kings, she is sailing with Yasna towards the Shatter Plains, and during their voyage, they come across a very rare creature known as a Sandvid, which she identifies through this dome-shaped brown-green shell that the Sandvid have on top of their bodies. And these things are big. Like, they're roughly in the same kind of family tree as the Chasm Fiends, which, as I said in the last video, are these giant creatures. They are described as... The shell on top is being described as about the size of 3 rowboats tied together, and they're at least about 6 or 8 feet in length and height. The shell is sometimes overgrown with seaweed and small crystals jet up from it, and while the sand is swimming through the water, the shell looks like a tiny mobile island. If you're wondering what I'm looking at, I'm reading the description off Coppermine because I didn't write it down when I took my notes for this video. Great professionalism. The shell extends underwater such that no other part of the animal can be seen from a ship, only shadows. Seeing as these creatures are so rare, and Shalon being very interested in flora and fauna, it's one of the many things that she draws. After a lengthy conversation with Yasna, she manages to convince the crew of the ship to lower her underwater so that she can see the creature. Because these things are so rare that seeing a living one is very few people have. And the ones that have been seen typically are badly decomposed corpses that have washed ashore. So seeing a living one is an exciting opportunity for her. Underneath the shell, their bodies are knotted gray-blue mass, with long, very thick blue tendrils that trail behind it at a drooping slant. Their skin is rippled and folded, gnarled like an ancient tree. They have an eye the size of a human head on each side of their body and 3 enormous fins on each of their flanks. So she's lowered down into the water and gets to see this majestic creature. If I had a way to insert images into these videos, I would get some art to throw in, just because I like the idea. I love the imagery of just Shalon just being underwater and seeing this great, magnificent creature. Number 2 on my list. For those that have read the book, as soon as I read this quote, you're going to know what it is. Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. This was the moment that I knew was going to be in my top 5. Just straight from the get-go. As part of a plan to bring the High Princes into line and unify them, Dalinar has had Adolin duel the Shardbearers in camp and take their shards. But it's not enough. Like, Sadeas and his wife are basically encouraging them not to duel Adolin, to just ignore him. And in an attempt to goad the current dueling champion into a bout, Adolin challenges him to what he believes is a 1v2 match. He agrees to basically a handicap match. Forgot to put my phone on silent. Excuse me. And Shalon, Adolin's betrothed, who I was just talking about, finds a way to turn the duel into a way to earn a boon from King Elokar, so that Adolin can challenge Sadeas, their ultimate goal. The day of the duel arrives, and the win condition is surrender. Not busting 3 pieces of plate, just flat out surrender. The duel goes until somebody surrenders, or the combatants cannot fight anymore. But instead of 2 combatants, Adolin is faced with 4. On a technicality, this is allowed because Adolin never specified how many he would fight. He assumed it would be a 1v2. And yeah. Adolin agrees to the duel regardless, but eventually he is surrounded and his opponents begin to beat on him. Adolin tries to surrender, but they won't let him. They don't just intend to defeat him, they want to make an example out of him. They plan on crippling him, basically. Dalinar, up in the stands, asks Elokar to borrow his shard blade, but Elokar refuses. Sadeas tries to goad Dalinar further by stating that the rules allow for 2 people to jump into the arena and help Adolin. That way it's still a handicap match, it's 3v4. Elhokar points out that by the time Dalinar puts on shard plate, it will be too late, and then fighting without it will open the door for accidents to happen, which is what Sadeas is hoping for. A way to take Dalinar out of the game. Renarin, Adolin's brother, who we have been told he has no combat experience, he barely knows how to hold a shard blade, and he has these fits that happen to him. We don't entirely know what those fits are. I think there's like some twitching involved or something. But, so Renarin, it would probably be more of a hindrance in this case. But Adolin joins the battle without plate, and one of the shard bearers moves to engage him. Adolin realizes that the judge has been bribed and launches himself back into the fight. Dalinar demands that the judge end the fight, but she refuses. He also, realizing the judge has been bribed, Dalinar screams into the audience, asking if any of the shard bearers present will help his sons. No one joins the fight. Not even Dalinar's supposed friend Amaram. Dalinar demands to know if people have lost their honor. And from behind him, Kaladin whispers, "Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do." With only a spear, Kaladin joins the fight. Up until this point, Kaladin and Adolin have repeatedly butt heads. These two do not get along at all. Adolin having taken issue with, how Kaladin treated him during the Battle of the Tower, as well as the fact that a dark-eyed soldier has managed to rise so high, and Kaladin does kind of talk back a little bit to Dalinar. Not overly insubordinate, but treading that line. And Kaladin, of course, has a huge chip on his shoulder when it comes to Light Eyes. If you remember me talking about The Way of Kings, or if you've read The Way of Kings, it's very understandable why. But ever the protector, his job as the bodyguard for the Kholinar family, Kaladin and Adolin fighting back to back, and working together. And the two of them, with a little bit of help from Renarin, not much, but a little bit of help, they managed to defeat the four opponents despite their odds. It is a moment of great victory, with the goal of challenging Sadeas almost within their grasp, and then Kaladin, being the airsick lowlander that he is, goes and challenges Amaram, accusing him of murder in front of the Almighty and everybody. Which leads to him being put in jail, which leads to my second honorable mention, the simple fact that Adolin, who has not gotten along with Kaladin at all, he actively protests the fact that Kaladin is in jail, and puts himself in prison until Kaladin is released. He refuses to leave. He demands to be put in prison until Kaladin is released, finding the whole situation to just... He thinks it's shit that Kaladin was put in prison after just, putting his life on the line. Because he's just got regular-ass weapons and no shard plate. In any other circumstance, the dude's dead. But yet he jumped in to help Adolin when no one else would. So yeah, Adolin kind of takes this personally. And is like, you know what? Fuck you, cousin. I'm gonna sit in prison until you release him. Obviously, eventually he does. And Adolin, despite being in a comfy jail cell, does leave and rewards Kaladin, but we'll get to that later. Our third moment is what I refer to as weathering the storm. And it's another one of these moments, kind of like what I just described with Kaladin and Adolin, where these two characters who have been at odds with each other find a bit of an understanding. In this instance, I am talking about Kaladin and Shallan. When Shallan first met Kaladin, she, under perhaps some less wise advisement from a con artist who was trying to teach her some stuff, Shallan pretended to be a noble woman from, she tried to be a Horton Eater noblewoman. And it's kind of a comical scene. Kaladin, of course, the chip on his shoulder with the light eyes. Shallan just finding him rude and kind of an ass. On a scouting mission so that Dalinor's forces can map out parts of the Shattered Plains for his assault on the Parshendi, Kaladin, Dalinor, and Adolin travel with this group. Shallan joins as well, with Adolin having promised her a chance to see a hollowed-out chrysalis for her study. During the journey, a woodworker calls for Daladin to come back across the bridge that has just been laid. Kaladin, realizing that this woodworker is one of Sadeas' men, realizes that there is a trap waiting to be sprung. Parshendi is spotted, and as Dalinor, Shallan, and Kaladin are in the middle of the bridge, the woodworker pulls a lever that collapses the bridge. And this is where I imagine that if Kaladin knew what the movie The Emperor's New Groove was, would just be thinking to himself, why do we even have this lever? Kaladin awakens at the bottom of the chasm, Stormlight having healed him. Shallan has survived as well via the same method. Dalinor is not among the dead. He had been tackled by Adolin off the bridge and safely onto the plateau. The two realize that a high storm is coming the next night, so they have a day to get out of the chasms. Like I said, ever since Kaladin and Shallan met, they have been antagonistic towards each other. Kaladin with a stressed light eye, and Shallan finding Kaladin to be rude and dour. So the two of them being stuck together is a less than pleasant situation for the two of them. This less than pleasant situation leads to them running from a chasm fiend, having drawn its attention. The next day they realize they've been going in the wrong direction, and while Kaladin blames himself, in an effort to get him to stop behaving like this, the two of them begin to bond over shared feelings of hurt and despair. With Kaladin realizing that, she's not a spoiled light-eye. She's been through some shit. Some shit that we have seen in flashbacks throughout the novel. They bond over shared feelings of hurt and despair, and then making light of their situation with jokes. Another encounter with a chasm fiend forces Kaladin and Shallan into a gap in one of the plateaus. Kaladin prepares to run out and distract the chasm fiend, likely a fatal distraction, and Shallan begs him to stay. But in failing to convince him to do so, she hands him her shard blade. Kaladin battles the chasm fiend, and Shallan uses her light weaving abilities to distract the monster when Kaladin is wounded. Kaladin kills the chasm fiend by stabbing it through the roof of its mouth. Shallan uses her blade to help rescue him. Shallan and Kaladin climb up the dead chasm fiend, then up the chasm, and Shallan carves them an alcove to weather the high storm. The two of them hold on to each other during the storm, with Kaladin telling her his story of the time when Amram betrayed him and all the events we saw in The Way of Kings, minus, Syl. And this is where Shallan admits to murdering her own father, and proceeds to tell him about the hardships and horror that she experienced as a child at his hands. Events that, like I've said, we've seen as flashbacks in this novel. The two of them leave the chasm with a better understanding of each other, and subsequently on better terms. One of the things you notice in the Stormlight Archive, a lot of these characters do not have happy pasts. We saw what Kaladin went through in the Way of Kings, and honestly, of the characters so far that have been, you know, the flashback characters, the one, in my opinion, that kind of has the most fucked past so far is Shallan. Like, holy shit, was her family a raging trash fire. Mainly her dad, but still. And just this, her attempting to keep it all together. Shallan, I feel for you, girl. I really do. And just that bit of relatability, at least to me, is one of the reasons I like Shallan so much. Her and Kaladin are probably my two favorite characters in the Stormlight archive. Like, my top two. Now we move on to moment number 4. And this is a long one. It's not the Sanderlanche, but it is a long one. The third ideal. For half the book, Kaladin has been wrestling with whether or not King Elhokar should be killed for the fact that he's kind of a shit king, and that it would be better for Alethkar, and to bring justice for all the people he's hurt or killed, be it directly or indirectly. Kaladin blames Elhokar for the suffering of his village at the hands of Bright Lord Rashon, and subsequently the death of his younger brother Tien, because Elhokar punished Rashon by sending him to Kaladin's village after an incident that led to the death of Moash's grandparents. Cal has also discovered that Moash is involved in a conspiracy to assassinate Elhokar. After Kaladin was released from prison, Adolin awarded him a set of shards, plate and blade, for, you know, him helping Adolin win the fight. But Kaladin, having a bit of trauma when it comes to these things, he gives Moash the plate and blade. And doing this, Cal has basically handed Moash the tools he needs to succeed in killing Elhokar. This action, inaction on Cal's part, has also caused Syl to seemingly vanish, with the Stormfather claiming that Cal has killed her. This lack of a bond with Syl has taken away Cal's ability to draw in and use Stormlight, with the final action of their bond seemingly being Syl staying long enough for the Stormlight to heal Kaladin when he fell into the chasm. Without that ability to draw on Stormlight and heal himself, he's still walking around wounded after his fight with the Chasm Fiend. By the time that Dalinar and the army that he manages to muster to go out to fight the Parshendi in one final battle, Kaladin is still wrestling with the decision to let Elhokar die, especially after Elhokar himself comes to him and expresses a desire to be admired as Cal is, and to be a hero. Elhokar recognizes that he kind of sucks, and that people don't look at him in a favorable light, but he wants to be better. Which, being better, being able to change, is kind of a major theme in the Stormlight Archive, which we'll get to really more in Oathbringer. After a fit of yelling to the Almighty that Elhokar deserves to die, without naming him, of course, because he is surrounded by some Ardents and Vasher. I mean, Zahale, don't read into that. He has this realization that Moash is justifying killing Elhokar with the same reasons that the Sergeant in Amaram's army used for leaving Tien to die. They're inexperienced, they don't know what they're doing. It's better to just Let them die for the betterment of others. Cal realizes that in this light, Tien and Alucard are the same. And despite how bad of a king he is, Alucard can learn and change. With this in mind, Cal decides he has to try and save Alucard. He finds Alucard alive but passed out drunk. He gets the king awake, and on their way out the door, one of the guards that Cal had to knock out before going into the king's room wakes up and attacks, and sinks a knife into Alucard. At this point, both Cal and Alucard are bleeding, since Cal reopened his wounds on his leg. Alucard passes out, both from, drunkenness and blood loss. And Cal is met by Moash and another shard-bearer. Moash asks if Cal will really attack a member of Bridge 4, and Cal tells him that Moash is no longer part of Bridge 4. Moash tries to talk Cal down, but Cal refuses. Cal tries to convince Moash to stop and to be better than a murderer. Moash refuses. Cal tries to fight Moash, but it's not even a contest, as Cal is wounded and Moash is in shard plate. But Cal being Cal. Cal gets back up as Moash and the other shard-bearer argue over who gets to kill Alucard. Cal refuses to back down, and can faintly hear Syl arguing with the Stormfather over him. It is in this moment that Cal realizes what the third ideal is. I will protect even those I hate, so long as it is right. Syl appears in Kaladin's hand as a shard blade, and Kaladin absorbs all nearby Stormlight and is healed and empowered. With the two shard bearers staring horrified at Cal, he has one message for them. The Knights Radiant have returned. This last one, I actually can show you guys. And it's one of my favorite images in all of Stormlight. The Clash of Storms. During the Battle of the Shattered Plains, the Parshendi have begun a ritual attempting to summon a storm, the Everstorm, using their new storm form. Meanwhile, the Stormfather is bringing forth an unscheduled high storm. Pattern warns Shallan that when the two storms collide, it will be devastating. For context, high storms are described as basically these giant hurricanes with immensely powerful winds that generate a wall of dust, water, and large debris. And it is powerful enough to carry large trees long distances. While the main body of the high storms carry less debris, the winds are still strong enough to hurl boulders. Meanwhile, the Everstorm, the Everstorm, with clouds of black and red lightning. It lacks a storm wall at the front, and carries neither debris nor creme, only billowing smoke and darkness. One sec, so I can get back to my notes. Once again, totally professional. Hiding in the forces of the battle is Szeth, the assassin in white, who is there at the battle to kill Dalinar. After saving Alucard, Cal is told the other assassins were trying to keep Cal away from Dalinar. After an unwinnable battle against Szeth, Szeth launches Dalinar into the air with a lashing. However, Dalinar is lowered back down by Kaladin, who had flown out to the Shattered Plains, and arrives to confront Zeph. Fueled by Stormlight given to him by Bridge 4, and enraged by those he's lost at Zeth's hands, the two clash, their fight taking to the skies, while both storms roil and eventually clash. And here is, well, there's a glare. Well, shit. Oh, you're gonna see yourself. See the camera. But yeah, I don't have a way to make this better. Shit. Oh, I tried. Sorry. That image has been burned into my brain ever since I finished Words of Radiance. And that is my 5 for Words of Radiance. The moment in Edge Dancer that I really like is when Lift, the main character of Edge Dancer, excuse me, confronts the Herald Nail, the patron of the Skybreaker. Excuse me again, the patron of the Skybreakers. Nail has been hunting down Surgebinders, killing them in attempts to prevent another desolation from happening. When Nail and Lift confront each other in Edge Dancer, when they confront each other, the Everstorm has arrived in the town in which Lift has found Nail. Nail has tried to kill Lift once already, in an interlude that we see in Words of Radiance. And to defend herself, Lift, who is also a Surgebinder, does not form a shard blade, but forms her Spren Windle into a rod to block the shard blade. This book doesn't end in a fight between this little 13-year-old and a Herald who's lived for thousands of years. She pleads with him to get him to stop, to realize that his mission that he's gone on, killing probably dozens of people, has failed. The desolation has arrived. The Voidbringers are returning. He's failed. And he's deluding himself into thinking that he hasn't. And this coincides with Lift's third oath as an Edge Dancer. I will listen to those who have been ignored. She listens to Nail's justification and, again, besieges him. You were wrong. You failed. Look around you. Nail kind of has a breakdown moment. And in a moment that's kind of shocking, Lift actually hugs him. You know, the man that just tried to kill her twice. And honestly, I think it's one of the more powerful moments in Stormlight. It's that, you know, these clashes don't have to end in violence. If we stop, we listen, and we have the wherewithal to notice when we're wrong. For those who tell you that there's nothing to be gained by reading genre fiction, they've clearly never read Stormlight. And also that opinion is just stupid. But they've clearly never read Stormlight. I hope through this series of videos I can properly express why I love this series so much. Why it is probably one of my favorite book series of all time, even though it's unfinished. And honestly, with Wind and Truth being the end of the first era of Stormlight, if Wind and Truth sticks the landing, excuse me, and it's a ending, but not the ending, if it's a ending to the story that we have gotten over the course of these 4 books, then I will very much consider Era 1 of Stormlight Archive to be one of, if not my all-time favorite fantasy series. Just because of the impact it's had on me. There's definitely a lot of moments with characters, my 2 favorites in particular, that I can relate to. There's just moments that Brandon just gets so right when he writes difficult things. And again, I think there's powerful moments that we can learn from in these books. But the end of this video got way too frickin' deep just now. So, anyway, I will see you guys next time when I get around to listening to Book 3, Oathbreaker, and I will probably lump 3.5 Dawnshard into this as well. If I can find a moment in Dawnshard, kind of like with Edge Dancer. So, I will see you guys next time.